All right, let's get right into it. What if I told you that for decades, a lot of marketing has been running on best practices that just feel right, but are actually fundamentally wrong? Well, today we're digging into the hard science of how brands really grow, based on the game-changing work of Byron Sharp. We're about to challenge some of marketing's most sacred beliefs with cold, hard evidence. And this quote right here, it just perfectly sets the stage. What it's really saying is that a huge chunk of marketing effort and budget is probably being wasted. Why? Because it's all based on these flawed ideas and unproven myths. The crazy thing is, it's not about being a bad marketer. It's about working with a broken playbook. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this explainer. We're going to replace those old, crumbling pillars of marketing myth with scientific laws that have been proven to work. We're talking across all kinds of categories all over the world and over a long period of time.
So first things first, let's really get a handle on the problem. We need to look at why the standard marketing playbook is so often broken. What are these core beliefs that are leading so many smart people to stray?
Okay, so here's the central fight. On one hand, you've got your traditional marketing best practice. This stuff relies heavily on stories, on gut feelings, and this almost religious focus on creating super loyal customers who think your brand is totally unique. But then, on the other hand, you have scientific law. This is built on decades of actual data that shows predictable patterns. And you know what those patterns point to? A completely different set of things that actually drive growth: market penetration and simple availability.
All right, let's tackle the first and honestly the biggest myth of them all. This obsession with loyalty. The idea that you grow by getting your current customers to just love you more and buy more from you.
I mean, we hear this all the time, right? It's cheaper to keep a customer than to get a new one. Your most loyal customers are your biggest asset. But is that really where growth comes from? Well, the data tells a very, very different story. And this is where we meet the double jeopardy law. Now, this isn't some fuzzy theory. It's a predictable pattern we see again and again. It basically says that smaller brands get hit with a double whammy. First, they have way fewer buyers than the big brands. And second, the few buyers they do have are also a little bit less loyal. They just don't buy the brand as often. It's a tough spot to be in. Now, this is what's so fascinating. Just look at the difference in the customer base between large and small brands. It's massive, right? It's a huge gap. Now, look at the purchase frequency, loyalty. The difference is tiny, just slightly lower for small brands. This tells us everything. The main thing that separates the big players from the small ones isn't loyalty, it's the sheer number of people buying them, period.
And that brings us to another classic myth, the 80-20 rule. The idea that 80% of your sales come from just 20% of your customers. Turns out, the reality is a lot closer to a 50-20 rule. Yeah, your top 20% of heavy buyers are super important. They make up about half of your sales. But, and this is a huge but, the other half comes from your so-called light buyers. That's the other 80% of your customers who only buy from you every now and then. There are just so many of them that they're absolutely essential to your business.
So what's the big, crucial takeaway from all this? It's simple. You can't really grow your brand by just trying to squeeze more business out of your existing fans. Real, lasting growth comes from increasing your market penetration. That means reaching more people and getting all those light and even non-buyers to pick up your brand, even if it's just once or twice a year.
Okay, let's move on to the second pillar of old-school marketing that needs to be knocked down: differentiation. This is the idea that to win, your brand has to be seen as completely unique, special, and meaningfully different from everyone else out there.
I mean, this quote right here, it's been treated as gospel in marketing for decades. And because of it, marketers spend billions of dollars trying to create some kind of unique selling proposition that they think will set them apart in our minds.
But here's the uncomfortable truth, and it's backed by a ton of research. Most buyers just don't see brands as being all that different. You can look at studies going all the way back to the 50s, comparing things like Ford and Chevy owners, and they all find the same thing. The customers of competing brands are almost identical. Your customers look an awful lot like your competitors' customers. So, if trying to be different is a myth, what should we be doing instead? The answer is focusing on being distinctive, and this is a really important shift in thinking. Differentiation is about what you say. Distinctiveness is about what people see and hear. It's not about trying to convince people you're better, it's about making sure they can easily find and recognize you in a sea of options.
Think about Coca-Cola's red color and that swirly font, or the golden arches of McDonald's. That isn't differentiation, that is powerful, unmistakable distinctiveness.
So that brings us to our final big myth, the idea that advertising is all about persuasion. You know, that a great ad works because it has this compelling message that changes someone's mind and makes them choose you.
The evidence shows that advertising's main job is actually way more subtle than that. It works by building and, this is key, refreshing memory structures. Its job is just to make your brand easy to think of when someone is in a buying situation. It's less about changing minds and way more about just being top of mind.
And this is just a brilliant way to think about it. Imagine your brand's market share is like an airplane's altitude. Advertising is the engine. As long as the engines are running, you maintain your altitude. You don't just suddenly shoot up into the sky, you just stay steady. But what happens when you cut the engines? The plane doesn't just fall out of the sky, it enters a slow, steady, and pretty much inevitable decline. That's exactly what happens to your sales when you stop advertising.
So you see, it all comes down to building two things: mental availability and physical availability. Mental availability is basically being easy to mind. Do people even think of you when they're ready to buy? And physical availability is being easy to find. Are you on the shelf? Are you easy to order online? At the end of the day, the brands that win are simply easier to mind and easier to find for more people more of the time.
Okay, so we've busted the myths, we've torn down the old playbook, so what's the new one? What are the actual evidence-based rules for growing a brand? Let's lay out the new path forward.
So here it is. This is the new playbook in action, and it's built on 5 core rules. First, reach everyone who buys in your category, not just some tiny, targeted niche. Second, make your brand incredibly easy to buy. That's your physical availability. Third, focus on getting noticed with those distinctive assets, not trying to prove you're different. Fourth, use all your marketing to constantly refresh and build those memory structures, making your brand easy to recall. And finally, never forget the #1 rule. The main way to grow is to acquire more customers. It all comes back to penetration.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. When you really look at your own marketing, are you building that mental and physical availability for the long haul, or are you maybe still caught in that old playbook, chasing loyalty and differentiation myths that science has already moved past? The answer to that could be the key to unlocking real, sustainable growth.